Good day, everybody. Good morning, good evening. Welcome to Healed Generation with me, Develo Malafine. There's something that has been on my mind, and that is to clarify the deviance that I was talking about in the previous video. Because if there's one thing that I don't want to do, is to be to mislead people. I don't want someone to watch my video and end up thinking that I have endorsed a certain behavior. I have allowed them to do bad things. I have said YOLO while I haven't said that. If there's one thing I want to clarify about this deviance that I've been talking about, that it's a journey that I have started to embark on, is the fact that the deviance that I was talking about is actually realizing that there are certain norms. There are a lot of norms that we have been growing up under. There are environments that have governed us, environments that we grew up under, that have actually made us behave in a certain way, made us to be certain people, but mostly to behave in a certain way because our behaviors are mostly led by our environments, our thoughts, and what has been said to us and everything that is around us. So with that being said, I've realized that a lot of things that we have been doing, a lot of practices that we have even been practicing, traditions and cultures, have actually just been led by our environments, led by the people who have been around us the longest. And being at the age that I am right now, I realized that I no longer want to live like that. I no longer want to live according to my environment, where I grew up, who I grew up with, how my parents have raised me in certain areas of my life. Because the truth of it is that it's not everything in my life growing up that was dysfunctional. It wasn't everything. I don't think if it was everything, I would be who I am and I would be where I am right now in life. It wasn't everything, but there are parts that have played a role into who I've turned out to be at the end of the day. And those parts are the parts that I would like to change. Those parts are the parts that I wish that each and every one of us can just get on that journey of actually questioning the traditions that we have grown up into, the culture that we have grown up into, the norms that the society have deemed to be normal according to the societal standards. So that is the deviance that I'm talking about, that it's about time we question literally everything, or rather it's about time that I've started to question everything. I no longer want to be in a position whereby I'm in an environment that is not good for me. I'm having a conversation with somebody that I don't want to have a conversation with. I am doing something that I do not believe in. I am taking part in activities that are actually not in alignment with who I want to be at the end of the day. That is the deviance that I'm talking about, that the norm that the society have deemed to be normal, I want to question if it's normal for me as well. I want to question if it's something that I want to partake in or not, because just because everybody else is doing it doesn't mean that I'm supposed to do it. My partner recently said something like that, that it's not every style, it's not every fashion, it's not every hairstyle that you as a person you need to take part in. Sometimes it's okay to just let things pass you by. It's okay to just not take part in each and everything that takes part in the world, because the truth of the matter is that the world can influence you in so many ways that can be good and that can also be wrong at the same time. So if you just go wherever the wind blows you, this means that at the end of the day you'll be taking part in bigger things that you are not even aware that you're taking part in. You'll be doing the things that you do not even believe in yourself, the things that you do not even know where they are going to lead you at the end of the day. So that is the deviance that I'm talking about, and it's something that makes people cringe when you want to do something abnormal, something that everybody else has been doing throughout the years, because with experience with society you find that it's okay when you do something that is in alignment with what has been done before, with something that has carried the society through life through all these years. But I think that we are a different generation that needs to question everything. I think that we are a different generation that needs to get back to the plan of God. And that means that us getting back to the plan of God, it means us questioning each and everything that has been placed around us, that has been placed within us, that we have grown up into, to question whether it's still something that we still want to take part in. I'm not just saying discard everything. I'm not saying take out everything and be empty, or even the standards and the boundaries and the values that have been instilled in you that you believe that they are good for you, those keep. But I'm just saying there are those that you must really question, because if you don't, they are going to work against you. Because if there's one thing that I realized about deviance, is that with deviance comes, it's either you're a deviant against what people want you to do, or you're going to be people pleasing, which is actually the topic that was supposed to be in the next topic. I was going to talk about how people pleasing can be bad for you as an individual, because it's simply you making sure that you put other people at the expense of your own peace. And that's exactly what I wrote about people pleasing. Something, as I was thinking about this, something that came to me was that people pleasing is when the joy of someone else comes at the expense of your own peace. This is like the revelation that I've had, that if you are just willing to go by how the society wants you to go, if you're just willing to go by even how your parents want you to go, your friends want you to go by, even your partner, if you're just going to be somebody who just follows everybody else and who doesn't have the standards that govern themselves, you are going to suffer at the end of the day. Your peace is going to suffer. You're going to suffer as an individual, because you're not going to grow to the level that you're supposed to grow up to. You're not going to be the version that God has intended for you to be at the end of the day. Because another thing that I realized is that the fact that you are Tibello Malafani, it means that there's a uniqueness, there is a purpose, there is something that God has instilled in you as an individual, and this means that that thing needs to come out. So if you're going to go and do everything that everybody else is doing, how is that thing going to come out? You understand? If you are going to just be moved by everybody else, if you're just going to adopt each and every pattern, each and every norm, each and every societal standard, how is God going to reveal himself in you? How is your uniqueness going to come out of you if you're going to maybe live out your life the way that your mother has lived, live out your life the way that your father has lived? That is why I'm saying there are generational patterns that we need to take out, that we need to be aware of, that we need to open our eyes to. There are traditions that I want us to, each and every one of us, to just introspect, to look into our families and see what is the one thing that has been carrying on in my family for the longest time ever that I'm not okay with. You understand? What is the one thing that as an individual I would like to change in my family, that I feel like now I'm grown enough to actually do something that is different? I mean, for example, there was a time in my life where I realized that there are a lot of things that I am not okay with in my family. One was the fact that my parents didn't actually go further in school. They didn't reach, I don't even think they reached high school level. Not only them, but in my family, even as I looked around, my cousins, the people that came before me, I didn't see one person who actually reached a point of university, somebody who was successful to that point of saying, I went to school to getting a degree. There was nobody in my family that I could look up to that extent to say that, oh, I want to reach that point. That was one thing that had always bothered me, that what can one achieve with education? Like, if I reach a certain point of education, what is it that can happen in my life? Can my life be better? Can I be a better person? Can I bring change? And that's when I decided that I'm just going to go to school. I mean, having matriculated in 2010, I took a gap year in 2011 because that's when I fell pregnant, and I had my daughter in 2012. But I spent a couple of years working, And then after that, I realized that I still want to go to school, because if there's one thing that I want to change, is the fact that in my family there's nobody who has a degree. Not only that, but there's a passion that I want to push, and I'm only going to thrive and push it and be knowledgeable in that passion if I go to school. Which is why in 2016, that's when I decided that it does not matter how old I am. It does not matter how long I waited. It does not matter if I can't even remember what it's like to sit on a desk and listen to somebody else. But I am going back to school, because that is the one thing that I feel like I need to change about my life. I need to change about my family. And that was me going against everything that my family had been going throughout. So those are the types of deviance that I'm talking about. Doing the good that you believe in. Doing the good that you believe in. Doing something that you know very well that this is what I want for my life. This is what God has intended for my life. And this is who I want to be at the end of the day. The deviance that I'm talking about is what Jesus Christ did in most of the scriptures in the Bible. There is one that still sits with me to this day, whereby he gets lost apparently between his mother and his father, and stays in the temple and listens to this preachers busy talking about the word of God, and he's talking as well, inquiring and listening to them. And his parents are worried about him, and as they find him in that temple, and they ask, how Morena, where have you been? And he's like, I've been all about my father's business. And for him as a child to say that, it means that he knew what he was called for. He knew the purpose that God has intended for his life, and it did not matter as to how he gets there. If to his parents he will be deemed as a deviant child, but the purpose had to be fulfilled at the end of the day. He had to sit at the right places with the right people. You understand? Give the teachings, get the teachings, and be in his father's house and do the work that he was called to do at the end of the day, in spite of what anybody says, in spite of even what his parents said. But that was his call. That was the call. Even the miracles that he did, some other people didn't even agree with them. A lot of things that he did, people were like questioning him. How is it that you're doing this to this woman who is like this? They felt like certain people needed to be treated in a certain way simply because they behaved in a certain way. And there were laws that were created against such behavior, that somehow he felt like this person still deserves to be forgiven for what they have done. They don't need the punishment that you guys have already set up as a law in this whole thing. And then this week, to close the scriptures off, I was also reading Daniel, and Daniel chapter 1 talks about how Daniel gets to this palace and refuses to eat the food that comes from the king's table. And as an individual, you think that the food that comes from the king's table, that comes along with wine, I would indulge. But with him, it was different. He deviated. He became a deviant, because he was like, I'm not going to partake in this. I'm not going to eat that food. I just need fruits, and then I just need vegetables. Those are the foods that I'm going to eat. And I know that they're going to benefit me at the end of the day, but I'm not going to take that which I'm not supposed to take. And you can imagine how that appeared to other people, because even the tenant who was looking after them, he felt like, I'm not the one who's going to give you all the fruits and veg. I'm just going to give you all what comes from the king's table. But Daniel was just like, give us 10 days of the food that we require of you, and then you'll see the difference. And indeed, after those 10 days, there was the difference in their body. They were more fatter than the other people who were there, who were called. And above all, they were wiser, because if there's one thing that I realized, is that there is favor that comes with following that which God has called you to do, following that which you believe in, following the right thing, following the will of God. There is a favor that comes upon your life once you start doing that. So at the end of the day, Daniel becomes this man who's able to interpret even the dream that the king has at the end of the day, that nobody else was able to interpret, simply because he was aligned with God. He did that which he was required to do by God and not by the world or even by the king that he needed him to do. And as we continue with chapter 3 of this very same book, you get to the story of his friends who were with him from the onset, who end up being thrown into the pit of fire simply by not following that which everybody else is doing, because the king built this gold image that he required everybody else to worship, and then they ended up not worshiping that image, and because of that they ended up being thrown into the furnace of fire because of not following that which the king required. But as they were thrown into the fire, it was only even the people who threw them into the fire who died. They did not die. They ended up coming out of that fire with not even a smell of smoke on them as they came out. And this actually brings me to this saying that we always say of "did you die?" when people say of how much a year was hard, how hard it was this year, and then life throws this question at you of "did you die?" at the end of the day. So I guess as they came out of the pit of fire, also life looked at them and it was like, "Did you die?" And they didn't die in that pit of fire because they stood for what they believed in. Verifying the whole Deviance video, this is me saying, I dare you to wear two different type of shoes, a sneaker and a heel at the same time. I dare you to practice your free will. I dare you to do that which is good for you this year. I dare you to be the best version that God has intended for you to be. And that means that going against everything that the world requires of you or expects of you, but doing each and everything that you believe in as an individual, that you know very well that it will lead you to where you want to go, who you want to be at the end of the day. So be here next week as we tackle people pleasing, which was supposed to be our second video this year, but here we are. Today, subscribe, like, and tell me the part that you liked about this video. From me to you, Lesala Handle, and goodbye from us.